Thus he came alone to Engband's gates, and he sounded his horn and smote once more upon the brazen doors, and challenged Morgoth to come forth to single combat. And Morgoth came. That was the last time in those walls that he passed the doors of his stronghold, and it is said that he took not the challenge willingly. For though his might was greatest of all things in this world, alone of the Valar he knew fear. And he issued forth clad in black armour, but Fingolfin gleamed beneath it as a star, and he drew his sword Ringiel, that glittered like ice. Then Morgoth hurled aloft Grond, the hammer of the underworld, and swung it down like a bolt of thunder. But Fingolfin sprang aside. Many times Morgoth essayed to smite him, and each time Fingolfin leapt away. And he wounded Morgoth with 7 wounds, and 7 times Morgoth gave a cry of anguish, whereat the hosts of Engband fell upon their faces in dismay. But at the last the king grew weary, and Morgoth bore down his shield upon him. Thrice he was crushed to his knees, and thrice arose again and bore up his broken shield and stricken helm. But the earth was all rent and pitted about him, and he stumbled and fell backward before the feet of Morgoth. And Morgoth set his left foot upon his neck. Yet with his last and desperate stroke, Fingolfin hewed the foot with Ringiel, and the blood gushed forth black and smoking, and filled the pits of Grond. Thus died Fingolfin, High King of the Noldor, most proud and valiant of the elven kings of old.
Man, this section, are you guys ready for this?
It's gonna be some fun stuff right here. That was a good intro.
I know. Welcome, everyone. We have, yes, everyone that's watching now and everyone that's watching on the replays. Thank you for coming. I'm Lady Balefire, and we are covering chapters 8 through 18 of the Silmarillion today. And joining me is some lovely people. We have High King Feanor and Gadfly Fiction. Nathan, unfortunately, couldn't make it today. So, yeah, it's just us 3 today, but I'd like to say hello to some of the people in the chat. I don't know if Jacob is still here, but he's still here. Have Matt, awesome Matt, the encyclopedia of LOTR knowledge, and we have John Thomas, Mark Clark, and Heisman. Thank you guys for joining us. So, yes, I'm very glad to hear you're feeling better, Matt, and I was kind of worried about you being in the hospital before, and just stay healthy because, yeah, I hate the hospital. Anyway, so we have a lot to cover, so I think we're just going to dive right in. Are you guys ready?
I'm ready. I'm as ready as I'll ever be. So
okay, cool. I know we want to chit chat, but I know Gadfly, it's Canadian Thanksgiving for you, so I want to try to get out of here in a reasonable amount of time. So, chapter 10 is of the Sindar.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So this is some it's a big history chapter. And it basically introduces us to Luthien. That's the daughter of Thingol and Melian. And then we have the arrival of the dwarves. So they finally come out. I thought this was kind of interesting because I think it was we'll let you have the dwarves after they were made. And that was really different. And there's, I'm trying to think of some of the elves start building an underground city. There's somebody help me with this one. Menegroth.
Hey, good job.
Menegroth. Okay, cool. Yeah, and that's 1,000 caves, and that was built for Thingol, and it's like Lorien but underground. And then they talk about how there's some fell beasts coming in from the north and east. So there's more Melkor is getting up to his old ways again, and Thingol. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
A lot of this chunk is sort of going over what was happening on Middle Earth while all the stuff that was going on in Valinor, that was the previous couple chapters. So it's kind of getting the history of the new setting.
Yeah. I kind of forgot about that part because I just got I read this like I'm really busy right now doing gardening, and it's just like lots and lots of plant knowledge in this, and kind of lost this first chapter. So you're absolutely right. So this is the like in the meantime kind of chapter while all of this stuff with Valinor happened and Feanor and stuff like that. So that's a great point. Did you guys what else is under here? It's like they talk about the dwarves and Thingol's making weapons and stuff, and then Melkor's also building an army, and he's building Angbad, and then we have what was that one called? Was that like one of the first battles of like there's a battle where they fight with Melgor and fighting
well, this isn't the
this isn't the start, right?
Well, there's a series of things that are called the numbered of battles. And they are the big battles, like the equivalent of a world war type battle. Whereas there's a lot of other smaller battles that go on, and they don't get counted as part of the great battles.
Okay,
but they are nonetheless just as important with the outcome.
Okay. Right? Yeah. And then at the end of this sort of like catch-up chapter, one thing really important happens, and that's because Melion's married to Thingol, and she's a Maiar, right? And they've been very protective of their area, and she decides, okay, now that all this evil is here, and after everything that happened in Valinor, she creates this kind of protective, like they describe it, so it's some sort of like force field or something. Is that a good way to describe it?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's like when you look at the tales of fairy in history, of people traveling to the land of fairy and stuff, it's like that boundary between the two worlds, where almost all the time no one can get past it. But there's specific circumstances in which people can pass through this barrier of mists and shadows and fogs and sort of illusory things. So it's not like a Star Wars force field barrier just being like a room, right?
Oh, so it's like more of a like liminal space. Like you can't get there, like unless you.
And what's interesting about it, and we'll find out more about this later, but the girdle of Melian ends up mixing with the sorceries of Sauron, and it just creates this hellscape, right? Just terrible place. Just because both of them are just so incredibly powerful, and when their magics intertwine, for lack of a better way to phrase it.
That's where Ungoliant stops and rests for a while to recuperate from the battle.
That's where she breeds. Yeah. So imagine like you have all of Melian's magic, for lack of a better term, and Sauron's sorcery, and then you have this den of spiders that are the seed of Ungoliant that are just crawling around all over that place. Yeah, it's a terrible place to be.
I know, and then it's and then how she ends and she's herself.
Yeah.
All right.
But the other, like you touched on the dwarves arriving and or waking up, or however it wants to be presented. But there's a clear mutual respect that like automatically comes up between these two races of elves and dwarves, and that's something that you see in the later chapters with the coming of men as well. Initially, there's always this sort of mutual respect and valuation, or valuing the other people, right?
Yeah.
But then later on we get into Morgoth's insidiousness, kind of breaking those and shattering those.
Yeah, because I think they talked about they liked the elves got along with the dwarves because they were beloved of Owly.
Yeah.
I really like the whole creation story of them. So
right.
Yeah.
Well, I can't remember if it's is it in this chapter? I'm just doing a quick scan through again just to see. I don't think it's mentioned here, but I do know Caranthir, one of the 7 sons of Feanor.
Yeah.
He had a strong dislike of the dwarves because he found them to be very ugly.
Yeah,
he thought they were ugly
that
creatures.
comes up in one of the later chapters. Yeah,
later chapters, and but he ends up.
They work together.
Yeah, they work together. It's a very, very mutually beneficial relationship. But I just thought that it's a funny note on there is just that when the dwarves started intermingling with the elves, Caranthir was like the odd one out who thought they were just hideous goblins.
Yeah, I know. I mean, it's funny because they do this in the Of Men chapter, but like they come up with all these derogatory names, and I know that they called the dwarves Nogrim, or the stunted people.
The stunted people, yeah.
Yeah, how very elfish. Elfist. That what that would be?
Well, that was the Sindar, if I'm not mistaken, who called them the Nogrim.
Oh yes, the Sindar.
It was the Sindar, yeah, not the Noldor. The Noldor were definitely much more.
The interesting thing as well with the Sindar meeting the dwarves is that the dwarves were far more hesitant to share their language with the Sindar than the Sindar were to share theirs with the dwarves, which is a very interesting.
Yeah, because it said the Nandor elves under Denethor returned to Beleriand, and they were the ones that taught the orcs the runes, right?
Beleriand.
Yeah, something like that. But I thought that was interesting. And then, of course, you had like Feanor was the one that invented the written language, right? If I remember correctly.
Well, what he did is he kind of perfected it.
Yeah.
They had a written language that already existed, and then he created the Tangwar, which was like a whole other, like, just massive improvement upon it. So elves are all about physiognomy.
They're kind of stuck. I know I got a whole earful from my brother who just has this like unmitigated hatred of elves because he likes anime. He just came up and was like, F elves. I was like, dang. Like, it's pretty funny, but I don't want to get off topic again because we kind of got to go through here. So, okay. So then after we get caught up with this sort of like what's happening here, we go to chapter 11. Now, this is really cool because it talks about the creation of the sun and the moon. And we know that they when Ungoliant and Morgoth attacked Valinor, they killed the trees and took the light away. And Yavanna and Yenna came back, and they get them to produce one last silver flower and golden fruit, and then Owly builds vessels for them.
Other way around. Golden flower, silver fruit.
Yes, I wrote that wrong. I'm sorry. Okay, so Varda turns them into lamps, and Owly builds vessels for them, and Manwë blesses them, and they put them in the sky. And what was really interesting about this part is it's kind of like an version of some mythology, because you have Isil the Sheen, the flower of Alperion, being the moon, and sun is Anar, the fire golden fruit of Lorelin, and you have the Mire taking care of them, and Arian, a female, guides the sun, and Attilian, a guy, guides the moon with the silver bow, which is really interesting because it's usually the other way around, right, Gadfly?
For most things, if they have a deity be in charge of the sun or the moon, the one everybody would be most familiar with would be Apollo and Artemis. But with the Greco-Roman mythology, I think they are the third charioteers of the sky. So they each inherited that role from a different person who inherited it from a different person. But then when you get into like the Egyptian stuff and the Babylonian stuff, it gets a little bit more ambiguous about the
About
typical
who's
genders
with
of
that,
them.
yeah.
Some of them have like 15 different sun
Different people
deities
doing
and
it, but I was just thinking it's more like it's usually like males with the sun and females with the moon, but I'm overgeneralizing it because you obviously know a lot about that.
Yeah, that would be the what would be the typical thing, but there's significant enough outliers in other groups, but yeah, typically the sun is the guy and the moon is the girl.
Mm-hmm.
Say Unknown Sage, you had a question. Obviously, the Dagor. I'm not going to try to pronounce out the Set and Flame with Fingolfin.
Dagor Brogoliak.
What was the other called again? Do you guys remember what that one was?
Dagor Nuin Gileath, which is the Battle Under Stars.
Yeah. So, these are the battles. Okay.
There's Nirnaeth Arnodiad, which that we'll get into that one later on.
Yeah.
And then there's the Glorious Battle, and I can't remember what that is in Elvish.
Yeah. I'm not Elvish. Like,
we'll get to it.
Yeah. And I wish I could speak Elvish. My boyfriend's dad used to speak Elvish, actually. He taught himself Elvish. Thought it's so impressive. Wow. But yeah, and so of course, obviously, it's light and it's up and it's coming all the time. So Morgoth hates it, and he tries to attack Tilion in the moon, but Tilion wins that one, and I think that scared the Valar a lot.
Tilion is like one of Orome's
he was
constant followers, right? So he's a prodigious hunter, and then I'm blanking on the name of the but she was the Sun Lady was
Arian.
One of the few fire Valar Maiar who did not get corrupted by Melkor, because you remember the Balrogs are all these fire spirits,
things,
right?
and she wasn't. And she was one of the ones that like never took corporeal form because it was just too much like brilliance and would kind of destroy her.
She always had her corporeal form, but even in her corporeal form, her eyes were too much for the elves to stare at.
Not to get too sidetracked, but I'm wondering, because I know in I'm just wondering if there was reference to that in Skyrim when you go to the hall. I don't know if either of you guys have played Skyrim, but you go to the halls of the dead in the end game, and they say that I forget the god's name, but essentially he's not able to be seen by mortal men. Like his gaze or what have you is too bright for the sight of him. I'm wondering if they there's a piece of that there. But
yeah, interesting.
It's quite possible, even if it's like 5 or 6 things removed.
Right. Sorry, I didn't mean to get sidetracked. I just it's something that.
No, that's interesting. It's interesting how many things you find when you're just like, oh, this little bit of Tolkien. Like you see other people kind of take it. It's like seeds in the wind. You see it everywhere, and I think that's why it's so great to read this and get all of the massive amount of world building that's in here. And yeah, so after that happens, I mean, the Valar kind of get freaked out, and they're like, okay, walls work. We are going to build a wall around Valinor. And we're going to keep this stuff out. And
we're
they do that.
Pay for it.
Yeah, exactly. So they build a kind of impregnable fortress, and there's one pass open to leave it open to the people in Tirion and the Noldor that they remained with. And then they also built the Enchanted Isles, which are kind of interesting because it kind of reminds me of places where like there's a secret entrance, like Gadfly was saying, like the Fey realm and stuff like that. So the Enchanted Isles seem to work kind of like that, and no one can get past them. And like if you get there, you're kind of stuck there. So I thought that was kind of interesting. And well, Gadfly's away. We're just gonna add Jacob Ironside.
Hey.
Welcome, Jacob. Like when I saw that Nathan was out and you were the first in chat, I was like, you've been reading along with us. Like I thought I'd ask you on. How are you doing today?
Uh-oh.
I don't know. I don't know if he can hear us. Maybe he's having some issues. But feel free to jump in if you can and everything, and welcome here.
Oh,
and
no, please tell me he's not having the same issue I had a few weeks ago.
No, I hope not. I mean, like this is StreamYard. It should work a lot better. I know he streams a lot. Like maybe he's just having an issue or something. Let me see. I don't like I can't see if there's like a private chat on here. It's not showing me that. Okay.
He's muted. His
yeah,
mic is.
I think he muted himself because I don't I haven't muted it on my side. Oh, maybe Oh, okay. They chose to mute themselves. Okay, cool. It's not on my end. Just checking.
Cool.
Okay, so did you guys have any other comments about chapter 11? Or anything?
Well, the one thing I was going to say, just to make note of it, is Morgoth was not expecting the sun and moon. He wasn't expecting that at all. I think that I'm pretty sure. Again, I'm going back because I was stupid and didn't take notes this go around. He says it here, but I'm pretty sure he was under the impression that the Valar had just abandoned Middle-earth or Beleriand and Middle-earth to its fate. Essentially, he wasn't expecting a move from Valinor to bring light into the world. But excuse me, sorry.
Okay, how am I coming through now?
Yeah.
Hey, yay!
My mic was turned off.
Jacob.
Welcome, Jacob.
Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for coming. I thought it would be nice to. I initially wanted to invite a whole bunch of people on, but I think with just the amount of stuff we had and just schedules and stuff, I was like, okay, I'll keep it to a small group. But I'm very glad to have you here, and you're always really supportive in chat and stuff, and love to talk to you. So
great.
Welcome to chapter 11.
So one of the things I absolutely love about this chapter is that it takes a while for the Valar to set the patterns of the sun and the moon, and they try out a bunch of different things. So we're going to have the sun rise here and then set, and the moon rise there and then set. But Telion is just so fascinated by Anar that he's constantly wanting to go and look at her and gaze at her and interact.
Yeah, it's the chase.
So he's wandering, but Anar is so devoted to her task that she's completely consistent. And so they set up these different systems until eventually they settle on the cycle of the sun and the moon that we have now.
Yeah, that was
the solar
fun.
calendar and the lunar calendar and how they interact with each other, and has the whole mythology for why that is, and the whole mythology of why they have dawn and dusk as well, which is fascinating too.
And it kind of harkened back to the tree, that one kind of periods where the 6 hours or something where the trees were both kind of dimming, like one was going to sleep and one was waking up too. Is that how it worked?
I like how they did that, how the lights came about in the sky. That was cool.
Yeah, it's fun too because it's it just goes to talk, and it's kind of cool because it sets it up with Morgoth hates the light, but it's there's always light of some kind. I thought that was interesting. And then the other funny thing about it is we're on totally flat Middle Earth, you guys. They talk about it going underground.
Hastening under.
Yeah.
Hastening under. Yeah, that was really, really funny. And so we're basically, I really felt in these chapters that we're really prepping up for something big to happen. And that does happen in chapter 12, which is of men, and that's when men arrive. And what was interesting about the sun and moon creation was that it hastened up the passage of time. Now,
Yeah.
I didn't, they don't talk about like a lot of years. They talk about like kind of ages. You're in this kind of twilight, liminal state. Like nothing is really certain with how time passes. But now that there's a cyclical sun and moon rotation, we have a measurement now, and it's gotten way faster. And I thought that was interesting.
Well, one of the other really neat things is that when the day-night cycle and the yearly cycle gets to this point, a lot of the things that Yavanna had sowed previously now are only coming into fruition. And so it's another one of these foresights, right? Like Yavanna being is probably one of the most important of the Valar in how she
create stuff.
Like is the reason for the earth being a living place almost.
Yeah, it's the growth,
Yeah.
it's the Earth Mother, and then not only does that, because remember she like created the ants, right, and the eagles.
Yeah, yeah, and well, eagles somewhat come important at the end of our section here. So.
Yes, the eagles
Yeah,
are very
indeed.
important and stuff. So yeah, so the men awaken at the first sunrise, and they are named the Atani by the Eldar, the second people, and the elves really kind of look down on them, and it's kind of interesting because it kind of reminded me of the part when Morgoth was like talking crap to like Feanor and sowing down in people. But there were a lot of elves that sort of like kind of jealous of the humans because they knew that they were coming, but nobody told them anything about the men. So they didn't know what to expect. They're like, are they going to be the more beloved of the Valar versus us, the elves, the first people, and it's kind of like, you know, jealous sibling syndrome a little bit. And they give them all sorts of funny names, and they are befriended by the Morkendi and the Dark Elves, the Twilight Elves people, and eventually they come to fight with the Noldor, the Sindar, and I think the dwarves against Morgoth, and we kind of end the chapter finding out that, hey, you know, like maybe there are things worth a little like not so hot between the elves, but you know, they spiced up with like Arendelle and Elwig, and Elrond was born.
Yep. A little bit of foreshadowing there, yeah.
It really is only pretty much just 2 pages, or 1 page front and back, of just a summary of the events to come. Which is one of the things that is full of in the Silmarillion. There's always these passages where it's like, here's a quick synopsis of the next. Early on, it's like the next 1,000 years, and in this one, it's like,
oh, it's Elrond. You know, Elrond is here. I'm like, okay, that's cool.
But it now becomes a point where you are, you know, the end result, but you're fascinated in seeing how it gets to that point.
I like how the men they wanted to, they were like respectful of the elves and wanted to learn from them, and became a valuable ally to the elves.
Yeah. Well, we'll find out later on, but they were almost in awe of the Eldar when they first met them.
Yeah.
The Eldar specifically, I think. The Dark Elves, obviously they taught men language and all that sort of stuff. But when they meet the Eldar, it's like a whole different tier that they're running into.
They were in the light of the trees.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, one fun thing to note, and I feel as a Tolkien fan, I must make note of this since we are on the coming of men. And I have the Atlas of Middle-earth right here. Mordor, the geographical location, already existed by this point. So it was already ash and volcano and all that sort of stuff. Men, during their migration, actively avoided it because they went around instead of, I believe they went south around Mordor as they were heading west. So if you see a certain show that has an old man turning a key in a Rube Goldberg machine and watching a waterfall, that is incorrect. Incorrect assumption there. That is not how Mordor. No, Mordor kind of always was.
Because that brings up another absolutely fascinating point that most people don't realize, in that the area of Beleriand is not the same as Middle Earth in Lord of the Rings at all.
Correct. It's a whole separate. It's Europe to like Southeast Asia almost. If we really want to if we were to put it to scale almost, because you have Europe, this whole other continent, which is joined geographically to Asia technically, but they're two entirely separate areas, separate people, everything.
Yeah,
you're absolutely correct.
I think I remember Matt explaining something to me when we were doing our Rings of Power watch, that there's a reason why it's so different, but no spoilers, we're not there yet. But
goodness.
So all right, so chapter 13, we got to keep going on here, or else we're just gonna get so distracted with all this good stuff. But okay, so you know what, I think you should do this. I think you should take it like Feanor. This is like your chapter.
Okay, yeah. So Feanor and his 7 sons and their host make it to Middle Earth, and they burn some ships, and that really sets Fingolfin off. And he's pretty upset about that because he can see the fire off in the distance and realizes that he's betrayed. So he and all of his kin head north and cross what's called the Grinding Ice. And while he's doing that, there actually ends up a battle takes place. It's called the Dagor Nuin Gileath, the Battle Under Stars. And even though the Noldor were outnumbered, the orcs didn't have a chance. They were coming over. The light of Valinor was fresh in the Eldar's eyes. They had fantastic weaponry and arms and all this sort of stuff, and they end up massacring the orcs. But Feanor gets a little too
Eager, zealous?
Eager, yeah. He's feeling himself a little bit too much, and he decides to start. I'm just going to Angband. You know what? The hell with it. I'm just going to go by myself.
Let's end it right here.
You only live once, guys. And he ends up getting surrounded by Balrogs, with a few of his kin around him, I believe is how it's said. Yeah. And he ends up being like. He fights him for a good long time, and I mean he gets barbecued by Gothmog, and he's still fighting, and eventually he gets mortally wounded, and that's when the rest of his host appears, and the Balrogs go back to Angband.
So I'll just read a chunk of it because it's a great.
Good. I know. I wanted to put it in the beginning, and then I found the Fingolfin part, and I was like, okay.
There, upon the confines of Dor Daedaloth, the land of Morgoth, Feanor was surrounded with few friends about him. Long he fought on and undismayed, though he was wrapped in fire and wounded with many wounds. But at the last he was smitten to the ground by Gothmog, lord of Balrogs, whom Ecthelion slew in Gondolin. There he would have perished had not his sons in that moment come up with force to his aid, and the Balrogs left him and departed to Angband.
That just shows how formidable Feanor was.
Yeah.
I mean, to fight off multiple Balrogs,
which are Maiar level strength characters, right?
And every other, fight with a Balrog one-on-one, it's a tie.
Yeah, pretty much.
That's pretty great.
And well, the thing that really upsets me about this part, as somebody who gets immersed in it, is so immersed in it where I'm like,
it's so short.
I'm legitimately screaming at characters don't you do that. No. I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, you stupid you stupid bastard. If you hadn't burned the ships and you would have sent them back to Fingolfin, you would have had you and Fingolfin here, and you guys probably would have won everything. Like, what are you doing?
I know. But what you could say is like he died doing what he loved, which was like not really thinking about everything and just saying like, fuck it, let's go, hit send. He was a Chad. He was the very first alpha Chad of Middle Earth, like no doubt. Like we didn't even talk about how he died. Goodness. Okay, so he has such a cool death, right? So he gets out there and his sons rescue him, and they're on a mountain. I think it was a mountain pass or something like that, and he just dies, but instead of having a body there, like he just disintegrates,
burns up.
Burns up with his fire, his inner fire that he was born with, when they talked about so much when he was younger, just like consumes him. And that is
And before he dies, he makes sure to remind his sons of their oath.
Yes, that oath.
Yeah. Okay. It was. That doesn't make it smart. Hindsight's 2020. Okay, I'm just saying.
Yeah. You're the one that was like, yeah, he died doing what he loved, like running into things without thinking them.
The difference between a genius general and a foolish general is the genius general's plans work out.
Right. Exactly.
Yes.
Can I see some? I don't recall the exact words in Parent. Feanor was born as the most awesome possible elf to exist, like Captain America potential for. Wow. That's low bar, man. You can't put me on Thor tier or like Thanos. Like come on, this is ridiculous.
Well, they weren't humans.
Or the Guardian.
This is true.
Hey, is that why when you say press F for respect, because it's Feanor?
Right.
Yeah, let's
Feanor kind of reminds me of I think it's a superhero called the Guardian or something. It's like a Marvel, but he's like god tier superhero, but he's also bad at the same time. It's interesting. It reminds me of that superhero for some reason.
Yeah, welcome, Irme. I think we were talking about when he burned the ships and left Fingolfin there, not the first time he burned the ships, because clearly he hates ships.
I mean, and then too, those were like the greatest ships ever made. And
I know.
He just burns them.
In comment to this, Feanor is not his birth name.
Yeah.
Curafinwe.
It's
Curafinwe.
It's the name he was after given by his mother.
Yeah, his mom was pretty cool. Rip Queen. Yeah, so.
Yeah, we'll get more of that later too.
Yeah, and so what ends up happening there is that the sun and moon just drive away the forces of Morgoth because they're afraid of the light, and then they end up Feanor's sons end up meeting with Fingolfin, and this is really interesting because there was a lot of drama there, and they weren't getting along, and now that our man is lost and he's gone to join the fire and wait in the Hall of Mandos, Fingolfin kind of comes back, and it's like super awkward, and nobody really wants to talk to anyone, and Morgoth takes a chance. It takes advantage here and covers the land with smoke. And what? Oh, I forgot. Oh my god, yeah. I'm totally getting ahead of myself here. I forgot that also in this battle, like Feanor's son, Maedhros, got captured by Morgoth, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Which is kind of important for the reunification of the Noldor as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very true.
It's Fingon who goes and rescues him with the help of a certain eagle.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that creates that that bridge for the So Maedhros gets injured, or like he gets kidnapped and taken hostage, and he gets hung from his hand off a cliff. I think he's in Angband. I can't remember. I don't think I wrote this. And
while they're kind of regrouping around the lake after the battle, Fingon goes out to rescue Maedhros. And he can't really figure out a way to do it. It's too high. And Maedhros is like, please let me die. And then he's like, okay, I'll kill you. And it'll be a mercy kind of a thing. But he prays to Manwë, can we please save this guy, as he's like stringing his arrow. And the eagles come.
Mm-hmm.
I love this part because it's just a really cool story. And eventually the eagle takes Fingon up to Maedhros. And Maedhros has to cut off... Fingon has to cut off Maedhros' hand to rescue him, but he still gets rescued. And then they come back, and Maedhros eventually heals and becomes an even better swordsman. And I like this part because
Maedhros superior to Jaime Lannister confirmed.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, definitely. Hi, you're Burmy. Nice to see you. Yes, hail Manwë. And that's what I was gonna say. One thing I really like about this part is that I think this is the first really big part where the Eagles are kind of aligned with the faith respect. This is like, he's desperate. Fingon is desperate. He's like praying, please help me so I don't want to have to kill, what are they, cousins, right?
Well, they're cousins. But he prays that the arrow finds its mark and it's a swift death. So the answer to the prayer is not what Fingon was looking for. It was a superior thing.
Yeah.
But it's also that moment of revelation for the reader that the Valar have not abandoned.
Yeah, that too.
Noldor, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's really good to do that. And of course, as I just read Lord of the Rings, like we all know what happens in a similar situation where like Sam and Frodo are also kind of just praying for a quick death. And then, hey, the Eagles! Yes,
Well,
I know,
also
Sage. I was
also
saying
in
the
the
F
Hobbit.
originated with Feanor.
In the Hobbit, the Eagles come to the rescue of the dwarves as well.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of forgot that.
I believe the king of the Eagles at that point is the son of oh hell, why am I spacing his name?
It's
Thorondor?
Thorondor, yeah.
Yeah, Thorondor, yeah. I believe it's his son that ends up at both the battle, it would be Battle of Five Armies, and also the one who rescues Frodo and Sam.
Yeah, that is interesting.
Means
and what's cool about that,
Long-lived creatures.
yeah, is you have the Eagles, and
Wait.
you also have
the
Elrond coming in. So you just realize how ancient and long-lived these like kind of higher level semi-divine beings are.
Well, and how long the entirety of history, the struggle between these people, and Morgoth, Melkor, Sauron has been, right? Like it's just for the mortal man, it's it's a couple generations and the knowledge of what happened is gone. But for the elves, it's still within living memory of like Círdan is still alive in Lord of the Rings.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
He is, huh? That's dude, I didn't even think of that.
Okay.
And he was one of the original at Cuivanen, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. He was at the awakening of the elves.
Yeah.
So he's truly ancient. Like,
yeah, that is totally true. And you know what? Matt had a great point here. It's like, given the dooms laid over the Noldor, one thing to notice is that when the Valar, other than Olmo, intervene for the Noldor, it's always for selfless good deeds, not retrieving the Silmarils. Mm-hmm. That is an excellent point. And I totally realize it in hindsight now that you mention it. And yeah, it's like they're not doing anything because they were cursed. And the curse, as we'll find out in the next couple of chapters, has some strange ways of playing out.
Yeah.
So that is very true. So this the rescue of Maedhros is really like the first reunification with the two factions of Noldor, of Fingolfin's, or not Fingolfin. Yeah, it's Fingolfin and I am getting tongue tied. Feanor and Fingolfin, the two groups like finally reuniting, and they
another important part of that is Maedhros renounces his kingship
Oh
And
yes,
gives-
He
yes,
gives it
that
to
happened too.
Fingolfin. Yeah.
Yeah, so now Fingolfin is, and that really just kind of puts aside some of the problems that they had and really paves
well,
the way
not for
forward about it.
Feanor's other kids though.
Yeah,
Yeah,
not
so-
his
some
other
of-
kids because they're kind of like, bro.
Yeah.
Bruh.
Most of Feanor's kids are got
Not
all of
happy.
Feanor's attitude without half of his ability.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. And
His two
Yes.
oldest, I think, are like the most reserved and like kind of all of them.
yeah, definitely. And Fingolfin has a big feast, and then what's interesting is we get Turgon and Finrod go out on a little bit of a journey, and they get a message from Olmo, basically prepare for evil, and it sort of sets Finrod out on this journey to establish Nargothrond,
Mm-hmm.
which is a fortress kind of like Menegroth, and he builds it with the dwarves, and they end up making him a magic necklace called Naglamir, and they call him Hewer of Caves.
Yeah, I like how that played out. They were asleep, and neither one of them told each other about their dream. So it was even a secret from each other.
Yeah, that was interesting. And then the other thing at the end of this chapter, for other like Lord of the Rings like excitement here, we get more information about Galadriel. So we have Galadriel. She stays in Doriath with Celeborn and Melian, and she's just learning knowledge. She's kind of growing up, I think.
Because you also have the reunification of the Sindar with the Noldor, right? Like,
Oh yes, that happened too.
And, I think it was Fingolfin's army comes and helps Thingol's forces, and so there's that unification, and then Fingolfin goes on to assist Feanor's portion of the Noldor. So like we have like this grand reunion of the elves on Middle Earth going on in this chunk.
Yeah, that is really good, and especially because the chapter ends with Galadriel's learning things, and there's this great huge attack by Morgoth. It's the third great battle. The elves win and draw closer, and they start tightening their watches, and this is where we start learning that Morgoth is taking captives, and he's he's learning what's going on. He's kind of poisoning people and trying to send them back, but people realize what happened, and they're just sort of leaving those people ostracized. And then Morgoth releases, I'm going to get this wrong, the Glaurung, the fire breath.
Yeah.
Glaurung, not to be like confused with Glamdrag, the Balrog guy. But in
You mean
this
Gothmog.
Gothmog.
Lord of the
I
Balrogs.
told you I'm confusing myself. Yeah, and
And
yes,
the great
that is
worm
what
comes
Galadriel-
forth.
Glaurung actually is not released by Morgoth.
No, he goes on his own
out
volition.
on his own.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
Morgoth
he
is
just left.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Morgoth
Well,
is pissed because Glaurung wasn't fully formed yet, like fully come into his own. So he was still weak and vulnerable.
It was pretty much it was Tolkien's equivalent of spoiler alert, because like
Yeah.
the elves got Glamdrag, the LGBT. Oh my goodness. The elves got a sneak peek at Glaurung, and so they already knew, like, oh, okay, this is the kind of thing you're breeding. All right, we got to double up our efforts, and they end up doing the Siege of Angband, which lasts forever.
Yeah, forever and ever and ever and ever. Okay, so
hundreds of years, right?
That's the end of chapter 13, and then chapter 14. I don't have much to say on other than it sort of kind of lays out the Siege of Angband, where it goes through where the parts of Middle Earth that Melkor built, like the Iron Mountains, and kind of talking about the territory he controls. It tells about where all of Feanor's sons are and what they're like presiding over.
There we go.
And
Yep.
just it's
Nice.
sort of like here's thank you. Here, I'm gonna see, can I make you how do I make you bigger? How did I make this bigger?
We're a professional production here.
I know, right? It's like I remember how to do this in what's it called, but I don't know how to do it on this one.
Just put a link in the private chat to the to a big
you know
image
what's
of the
weird?
map.
Like I am not getting like private chat on my end, and I'm afraid to refresh
I could
it.
share. I have a map pulled up. I could share that if you would like.
Sure, yeah, if you got that, like I can do this. I'm sorry. I just like I remember the last time we did this, I had the chat and it right now. Oh, here it is. Oh, stupid. Okay. Let me see. Okay, let me see this if I can share. Okay. Share screen, and we want Elsa Beleriand. Share. All right, like there you go. Okay,
Yay.
so it's a great map, and it has everyone's name, which is good because I did not want to try to make this, but I think this is a good chapter because it really is preparing us for what's to come and just telling us where everything is. And did you guys have anything like you wanted to say about this chapter or anything?
There's a lot to go in on this about the geography and sort of the pairing up of individuals and stuff that happens.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of dense material to go through, so maybe not for this stream.
Yeah, I feel like there's just there is a lot there with place names and the way that I really like the way that like I don't know if it was Christopher Tolkien and his father, like I don't know who wrote what of this part, but it was an interesting read. Like it's just very it's a nice change with the dense history where it's just this is this area and everything. And
well, it's interesting to me. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to.
Oh no, go ahead, go for it.
What's interesting to me, just looking at this map and familiarizing myself with it again, is that all the families are they're grouped together. So you have the sons of Feanor that are in the east. You have Fingolfin and his sons who are in the northwest. You have, but the only ones that are really separated are the sons of Finarfin. You have Finrod, who's in Nargothrond, over by the coast, and then you have his two other brothers who are in Dorthonion, way up north near Angband. Like his was the only family that kind of got split up in all this, and Galadriel is kind of just like a non-factor. She's in Doriath getting hitched. She's getting her Mac on. But I thought it was interesting too with Galadriel because she was like, it was very sure like Galadriel is not the one. She just wanted to come for the adventure. She wanted to learn stuff, and she's very much staying out of the like.
Well, she had in her mind that it would be great to be a ruler as well.
Like she's totally different.
She ends up being the one, I believe. Was it her or was it Finrod? I know we're going back a chapter, but that ends up spilling the beans to Thingol about the kinslaying.
Yeah, that ends up. I think that is. I forgot that part. That did happen.
Reads into a lot of what Galadriel says and doesn't say.
Yeah.
But it's the whispers that Morgoth had been sending out get back to Thingol, and Thingol learns about all that stuff. There's the two brothers there at the feast, and the one of them doesn't want to condemn the sons of Feanor, but then the other wants to like justify that the Fingolfin and the sons of Fingolfin were not part of the kinslaying.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was definitely true. And she does kind of like try to get information of her. And I think Galadriel ends up telling her pretty much everything except the bad part.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I believe, I might have to go back. Melian, I think, also tells Thingol, like, there's something going on here. Something's not right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
her spidey senses were going off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
go for it.
Oh, I was just gonna say, after Beleriand and its realms is of the Noldor and Beleriand.
Yay!
It's just like
Yeah, well, it kind of goes on with it. Okay, it's like Turgon gets a warning from Olmo and starts building Gondolin, and many of the Sindar move there. And Gondolin was the hidden one, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, so this one is really important because he's like, I'm not going to tell anyone what this is. Nobody knows where it's at. And it's like the people that leave to go with him here, they're like, you can come in, you're never going to leave, and no one's going to find it out. Because I think he was trying to do what they did to Valinor, but like on a lesser extent. And yeah, and this is where Galadriel talks to Melian about what happened to the Noldor in Middle Earth, but leaves out the part where the kinslaying and he also learned out about the loss of the Silmarils, and it didn't really strike me before, but I don't think that was widespread knowledge, was it?
No. Well, it was amongst the Noldor, but not amongst the
Sindar and the other ones.
And there's an important little bit here of where Melian explains once again, in case people hadn't been paying attention, that even though you have the sun and the moon, which are the fruit of the trees, the light of the trees themselves, there is the only uncorrupted version of that light is still within the Silmarils.
Mm-hmm.
Still in the Silmarils.
Once again, Tolkien is hammering that bit home.
Yeah. It's kind of an interesting because they're talking about light within. You have light within Silmarils, the light within the sun and the moon, the light within Feanor that ultimately consumes him. Like there's too much there, but it's an interesting theme there. And yeah, and then finally and eventually at this part, Finrod tells Thingol about the kinslaying, and this just angers him immensely. And he actually gets so angry he bans people from speaking the Noldor version of the language. And so for a minute I thought, oh great, there's going to be more elf drama, but I don't think it's mad enough that they like destroys the alliance that they recently made, but it's definitely
it seemed like the elves that were there at the kinslaying kind of wanted to forget it, so they just learned the language that the king wanted them to learn and just went with it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, you once again with the Noldor, you have those two distinct groups: the followers of Feanor and the followers of Fingolfin, right?
Yeah.
And the followers of Feanor are the kinslayers, whereas those of Fingolfin are not the kinslayers. Aside from a small group of them.
Yeah, I was going to say, because part of the host of Fingolfin did go and join the host of Feanor because they thought that the host of Feanor was being attacked. And I do believe the House of Finarfin was given a pass by Thingol because they didn't take any part in the kinslaying.
Yeah.
They had nothing to do with that.
I think with that, it was like also too was that they still decided to leave Valinor for like the same kind of reason. So even though they didn't take part in it, it's like they were still kind of victim to the same curse, right?
They still have the doom of Mandos on them,
Yeah,
that's cool.
The only one that refused to go was Finarfin. He repented and became leader of the Noldor in Valinor. But all of his children left.
All the left. Yeah. That's depressing. Okay, so on to chapter 16 of Meglin. I thought this was interesting because unlike the other chapters where it's a bunch of history, this is a very specific story. So in this one, we learn of an elf named Eredel. I hope I'm saying that right. She's a daughter of Fingolfin, and she leaves Gondolin with 3 escorts because she wants to visit her cousins, the son of Feanor, and but they're gone. So she eventually gets close to there, and she gets lost in an area called Nan Elmoth, and she runs into this dude named Ael, the Dark Elf, which reminded me of Drizzt, from Forgotten Realms, and Real quick.
So the the area where she gets lost in Nandungortheb,
Yeah.
that's the area where Melian's girdle and Sauron's sorcery intermingle.
Oh, that makes so much more sense. So no, so it's totally like this like liminal world that like is kind of like lost. Okay, that makes sense.
So they get too close to that, and that's the reason why she ends up getting lost and then ends up in Nan Elmoth.
Yeah.
But you also have Eol's sorcery and Eol.
Yeah, let's talk about this guy for a minute. He is so different than all of the other elves. Like, what are your thoughts on this guy?
He is a perfect encapsulation of a mythical and mythological trope of a blacksmith. Mm-hmm. Because you have all these blacksmith deities and characters who are all trickster individuals with a special secret power. And this comes up throughout Egyptian mythology, Hittite mythology, Greco-Roman mythology, Norse and Germanic mythology. And it's a pattern that comes up over and over and over again, that these smiths have a secret knowledge, are trickster deities, and have a form of physical corruption to them. Now, Eol doesn't necessarily present that too much, but it does imply that he's, hunches over because of his smithing. So it's very fascinating seeing Tolkien perfectly replicate this sort of thing. And he very much reminds me of Wayland the Smith from the Germanic mythology, or Waylon, or what's the other Germanic? Anyways. He's a smith who is capable of performing fantastic deeds with his forge. Mm-hmm. He gets captured by a king and set to work making stuff for him, and so he ends up killing that king's sons, and through trickery and treachery ends up having the king send his daughter. And so Waylon the Smith, depending on the story, he either abducts the daughter and runs away with her, or assaults her and sets up the king's death later. So Eol very much replicates this type of mythical archetype, which is fascinating.
I think that is really interesting, because I was like, there's definitely a lot of things going on here. So just to give you a summary of this, so Eol the Dark Elf, like, she enchants. Well, they use the word enchant, and I thought that was really interesting because it seemed like maybe it wasn't consensual, but then it said she did choose to end up marrying this guy. And so Eredel marries Eol, and they have a son named Maeglin, and they grow up and everything, and they teach their kid all this stuff, but like they're never like Eol is very much a creature of the night. Like, he doesn't like going out in the light and stuff, and the forest is pretty dark. And so eventually Eredel and Maeglin, while he's an adult, like, they want to leave, and eventually they get a chance to escape, and they pretty much run off, and they go back to Gondolin. Let me check this. And Eredel is welcomed back, and her son Maeglin swears to serve Turgon there, and they're pretty happy, and they're like, wow, sunshine is awesome, like, touching grass is really cool, this is rad. And so but there's one problem. Eol is an excellent huntsman, and he followed them, and he figured out where the secret entrance to Gondolin was, so he tries to get in there. He gets captured, and he's brought in for Turgon for justice. And Turgon is like, look, it's like, you can either stay here forever or we'll kill you, because that's just the rules.
He's like, you usurpers, you took this land. It's not your land, it's our land. And
you know what's interesting about that is that before he gets to Gondolin, he runs into Curufin, one of the sons of Feanor.
Oh yeah, he
does. That's right.
And Eol is trying to get smart with him and brings up a red hell. And Curufin says, don't throw your wife's name in front of me. You're not going to get friendship with the Nold stealing.
It's like, keep your wife's name out of my mouth.
Well, I actually want to read this part because it's kind of a baller. It's a baller line.
It's like,
He says, then Curufin looked darkly upon Eol. Do not flaunt the title of your wife before me, he said. For those who steal the daughters of the Noldor and wed them without gift or leave do not gain kinship with their kin. I have given you leave to go. Take it and be gone. By the laws of the Eldar, I may not slay you at this time. Like, if Curufin wasn't a law-abiding citizen, that would have just been the end of Eol right there.
yeah,
But
like
the next part of that as well is prophetic too.
Yeah.
You know, and this counsel I add: return now to your dwelling in the darkness of Nan Elmoth. For my heart warns me that if you now pursue those who love you no more, never will you return thither.
Mm-hmm.
yeah. FAFO, guys. And oh god, it is really sad. It's actually like he's like, well, give me back my son. I'm just gonna take what's mine and get out of here. And then he actually draws a spear, and because Eredal is like, no, he's not leaving, and she gets in between them, and he ends up stabbing her, and his spear was poisoned, and she ends up dying that night. And so even though he didn't technically make a decision to stay or to leave, he was just there. They're like, okay, well, you just murdered Eredel, so you're going to have a trial now. And
you had Eredel and Turgul's daughter, Idril.
Oh, yeah, that was interesting.
Were pleading on his behalf.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But so he ended up killing one of his petitioners.
Yep. And well, the thing is that his death sentence wasn't immediate. It wasn't until after Redhell died that Turon said, "All right, nah, you're done."
Yeah, he's like, that's it.
In a pretty brutal way too. They just throw him off a cliff.
Yeah.
Out the moon door.
Moonzor there for him. And what was interesting about that was that they talk about Maeglin, and because he was of the Noldor, he sort of had this interesting part of their curse, and that was that he fell in love with Idril, which was Turgon's daughter, and also his cousin, and that was sort of like this really kind of totally taboo thing, right? And
well, the elves never conceived of that in their minds, and so Idril thinks he's like completely twisted because of this, because she can perceive his mind, right?
Oh yeah, that's something I never thought. I just like the way it's described. Oh, it's just normal, but they have like telepathic stuff going on. Huh?
The other thing to take into consideration, it's not stated explicitly in the text, but I often wonder, it's like, I wonder how much of that had to do with Maeglin being kind of living so much of his life in isolation in Nan Elmoth, because he had never been around any of the customs of the Eldar, any other people. It's just him, his mom, and his dad in this forest for so long. And so, he might be not programmed that same way.
Yeah, exactly. It's sort of like he's a little what do they call those things? Neats that never leave.
Yeah.
The parents' basement, the proverbial basement.
Puer Eternus, the forever child.
Hey, Zax is here. Hey, Zax, how you doing?
And the other thing about Eol's death is Maeglin didn't seem to really care. He just kind of looked on like, all right.
Eol did throw the spear at Maeglin.
Yeah, true.
So
true.
Yeah, and it's interesting too because Maeglin ends up being super like he's very successful in Gondolin and he stays there, but he's so like jilted by Idril's lack of love for him that he just becomes this sort of embittered asshole character. So interesting how that plays
out. Very important that you note that he achieves his success in seeking for power and influence.
That's the wordage there is very specific and very important.
Yeah, he's not being successful because that is providing service to the society. He's being successful because he's wanting to establish himself as a powerful
Oh
authority.
yeah, right. Because his mother was Turon's daughter, so he's seeing like, oh, this is something I could inherit. Oh man, oh goodness. So yeah, that was an interesting story. I also like when I was reading it, it reminded me of when I was a little kid reading Edith Hamilton's mythology and how like she would write the stories like that. It just really felt like that. And I like that story. I mean, obviously it's not a happy story, but I liked how it was sort of presented as this just one sort of like macrocosm of three people, and in such a big kind of like macro scale of chapters that we've been reading. So, are we ready for chapter 17, The Coming of Men into the West?
Yes, has one of my favorite little short stories in it. I'm looking forward to this.
Oh yeah, okay. So Finrod goes wandering. Oh, you want to go for it, Feanor?
Oh no. I was just questioning if it was the story of Hell Dad and his Hell Son and his Hell Daughter.
Yep.
Yeah. There's so many. There are so many names in people in this chapter. Like, I'm just like, okay, I'm not even gonna try. But basically, okay, Finrod goes wandering. He finds Med led by Beor, watches them and falls in love with them and sings to them. And he names these people the Edain. I'm assuming this is like has some relation with Aragorn's people, the Dunedain. Right,
yes.
like that, something like that. Okay.
Yeah,
the Edain, the first men,
right?
Yeah.
Well, these are the people who end up becoming the Númenóreans.
Oh, okay. So they are Aragorn's people. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I always thought just as a little tangent, I always thought the imagery of this was quite beautiful. Him coming across their camp and they're all sleeping, and he finds one of their crude harps and starts playing music on it.
Yes.
And they're like bewildered. They're like,
story.
whoa.
It was so cool.
He comes across their camp because they're celebrating getting away from the terrible lands that are you know, under the influence of Morgoth, right?
Yep.
And so they're having a party essentially, and they're kind of careless, and so they all end up going to sleep, and nobody's keeping watch, nobody's doing anything. So he just slips in, plants himself by the fire, and starts playing the crude harp. It's mentioned that it's a very crude instrument, but he plays it so well, even though it's crude.
He plays things they've never heard before.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what was interesting about that part is it's like you kind of like forget, because they talk about so much light, and they talk about, the light of the Valar was still in their faces and their eyes and stuff like that. When they talk about elves, you kind of forget that the original thing that brought all this into existence was the music. So it was kind of cool to me to get the music again, and then it has a sort of like it's the music part of the Valar that's coming in that he's kind of carrying, and he ends up.
Oh, sorry. I didn't mean to.
No, go ahead.
Well, I wanted to point this out was that the men thought they were, the way Tolkien describes it, that they were in a dream, and the only reason the only way they realized that they weren't in a dream was because they looked and saw their buddy beside them, like, oh wait, this is real.
bro, you're seeing this right. You're seeing this right. Like friggin' elves.
Like a pinch me moment. Like, hey, pinch me. Like, come on now.
I know, right? That's so cool.
You bring up a really good point about the music, Lady B, because in one of the chapters of this section, it talks about how the Noldor are superior in terms of arms and craftsmanship to the Sindar, but the Sindar, who had not gone to Valinor, were superior in the forms of magic, of music, and the magic within music, which is makes complete sense that the Noldor who abandoned Valinor have lost that sort of, or lost a lot of that connection to the great music of the universe.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah. So then it's like, so Feanor kind of befriends Beor, and he helps them like settle around in Estolad, and eventually Beor leaves to serve Finrod, and then eventually Fingolfin meets the men too, and he welcomes them, and they all start making like relationships with the men, and a lot of the men serve the elves, and but Thingol doesn't really like them, and he doesn't let them live on his land. And becomes important because later on, Morgoth starts stirring shit up again, and there's more strife in the lands. But the many men still choose to fight, and I thought it was really interesting. In this part was because men were just coming up being the elves and saying, "Hey guys, you know what? I said I swore to serve you, but you know what? My life's really short, so like, can I go out and fight Morgoth right now while I still have time?" And a lot of them do, and that's just kind of interesting there to realize that like. We've been reading something where it sounds like, okay, this is just normal time, but then like this is a very like generational thing for the men who live so much shorter lives than the elves.
Well, so much shorter than the elves because the elves are immortal. But here we go. The years of the Edain were lengthened according to the reckoning of men after their coming to Beleriand. But at last, Beor the Old died when he had lived 390 years. For 40 of which he served King Felagund. So the men don't necessarily have what we would call short lives.
Yeah.
But they're short in comparison to
the
immortal
elves.
beings who can only die by being
I love how the elves mourn for the men too.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool because it's like you don't see that yet.
Well, yeah, it was the first time the Eldar had ever seen death by mortality, not death by slaying.
Great point. Yes, great point. It's sort of like it goes back to the whole trees. It's like there's the tree of life and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, and it's like the trees have been kind of destroyed. So in their world, it's more like, okay, now you're going to know a mortal life. So, and then we hear about the Hell families and a group of men led by a guy named Haldad. They get attacked by orcs, and his daughter Halith eventually leads them to safety. And
we get some warrior women here.
Yeah, this is like this chick was cool. She's really badass. She's Eowyn vibes here for sure, but she leads her people to safety. And Caranthir comes up to help and offers to, hey, you can like live with us. I know we're just like, you know, the border elves like doing the siege of Eggman and stuff, but she's like, nope, like we'll live free or die. And so they keep leaving, and they leave his lands and they follow her to I'm gonna say this wrong, Brethel, where Finrod treats with Thingol to like get them lands to stay. So you can just stay here, like just let these people go, they're fine. And she gets kind of established there, and then it talks more about the Edain being friends of the elves, and they serve and learn from them. And there's, I think that's the part where they're like realizing the mortal death there. So,
well, and the thing is too, before that, when the Haladin first came, they were met with lack of friendship from the Green Elves. The Green Elves pretty much turned them away, so get out of here.
Yeah.
And then they ended up unfriendship. Yes, correct. And then,
yeah, isn't that funny how they described that? I was like, unfriendship.
It's not enemies or hatred or anything. It's just unfriendship. We are anathema to each other.
Yep. And then they ended
just by seeing them, not by interacting with them, just by seeing them, they're like, no, we're not your friends. Get out of here.
The men cut down trees and hunted animals.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like they are completely vegans and carnivores.
That's something I've been wondering about the elves. What are they doing? They're hunting. What do they hunt? What do the elves hunt? I mean, do they eat meat?
On the group of elves.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because that one particular group. Hey, Jack. Yeah, I was gonna say it was like that one particular group of elves, and I'm not gonna try to find my notes of the like sort of like descending list of all the different elves, but that was the group. The group of elves that they met were the ones that decided to live in the forest like a way long time ago. I can't remember the name of them.
They came and
yeah, I think it was something like that.
Well, I know the Avari were the ones who didn't go west; they stayed.
Yeah, it was those like the forest elf people, right?
So there's all the different groups of elves that break off during the journey to Valinor. So when you get to the end, you have Thingol and Melian form their couple, and a bunch of people come and sort of group up with them. But then there's a couple other groups around at the time. And Círdan the shipwright is one of them, and his people, and then so it's you got all these different disparate groups of elves.
Yeah. Well, and the interesting thing is too, the house of the Haladin ends up getting caught up in the curse of Feanor, because one of the things the curse says is all things are going to be marred, that even if they begin like with goodwill. And Caranthir saved the Haladin, came down, offered them a place to live, and then they ended up just kind of fizzling out of history essentially after he did that. And it's weird how this curse, even in small ways, like in the grand scheme of things,
it's like you just don't even think of that because you forget all of the people that were with like Feanor and stuff. And that's wow, that is crazy. But yeah, Matt, thank you. It was the Nandor elves. Yeah, they were the ones that got them. Yeah.
And the other thing was that the people of Caranthir didn't pay the Haladin any attention at all. They just kind of ignored them. And later on, it said that Caranthir overlate saw how valiant men were. And it's like, oh well, maybe if you had acted sooner, a lot of the Haladin would have still been alive, and maybe Haleth wouldn't have said, nah, I don't want your patronage.
Exactly. So that's interesting. So that part is like, again, it goes through a lot of stuff there, and you've always got that current of like Morgoth like causing trouble. There's like rumors of things happening. There's like little bits of evil trickling into the world, which gets us to the great battle of chapter 18, which is of the ruins of Beleriand.
Yeah, boy.
Of Fingolfin. This is the big meaty chapter for this section. And does anyone want to tackle this one?
Well, all I have to say is like, there's a big debate as to whether this is probably the most epic moment in the history of Arda, arguably.
I know. I'm like this is like, here's my bigger outfit chat. Is it going to be Feanor or Fingolfin?
Well, it's funny because both of them succumbed to a
rage. Almost.
Yeah. Like it's just like
Feanor was blinded by his rage, whereas Fingolfin was blinded by despair. And that's something that Tolkien has made is presenting here in this story of Fingolfin. It's a great, fantastic feat, but it's not one worthy of celebrating because it is Fingolfin succumbing to despair. And he went on a completely needless act of courage and bravery, which had a fantastic result. But in the end, was it really a necessary great deed, right? And that's one of the things that's paired with Feanor is like, were these great deeds necessary? They were great deeds, but why?
It's interesting. Just to bring it up here is that it starts off with Fingolfin like hearing these things and saying, "Is like, look at you guys, we can't just keep like." Because this siege has gone on for so long that they've all kind of gotten used to like where they're living and stuff. He's like, we need to preemptively attack Angband, but no one wants to do it with him. And then it eventually leads to the fourth battle of the Battle of the Sudden Flame. And that is the worst battle. So it's got like Glamorung the dragon leads the battle, followed by the Balrogs. There's orcs. There's volcanic eruptions. There's natural disasters started by Melkor. It ends. That's the end of the siege of Angband because they all like a whole bunch of people get defeated.
Two of
Angrod-
Galadriel's brothers get killed in this.
Yeah, Angrod and
Yeah.
Aegnor slain the sons of Finarfin with a whole bunch of people. There's just so many in here, and I was basically just making a list, and Ben rescued Finrod, and then he returns to Nagothrond, and the Eastern Marches fall. Celegorm and Curufin are defeated. They are not dead, but they have to retreat. Maedhros defends until the dragon dude arrives and attacks them. Fingolfin sees this as a ruin of Noldor and goes to challenge Melkor in single combat. Like, he gets completely black-pilled here. And I think that's a very great point that you guys like brought up with like they're like ultimately the same thing, but like there's different motivation.
Well, it's really to kind of, it's almost like I was saying earlier when Feanor not burned the ships and brought Fingolfin over. This is kind of a similar thing where it's like if Fingolfin hadn't went berserk and kind of kept his cool, then there later on down the line, as we continue reading, there's going to be a lot of scenarios where if Fingolfin was around, things would have turned out a lot differently.
Yeah.
But alas, we come to Fingolfin scaring the living hell out of everyone in Angband. And
yeah. So Fingolfin's like, okay, I'm not done. I'm like, fuck it, I'm out. Like, and he goes and he's like, I'm gonna freaking challenge like Melkor. Like I'm just gonna do it myself. Like, I'm getting my horse. He takes his armor, and it's such a great thing. And this is what we started the stream with. And unfortunately, I wish I could have just done the unabridged version of it, but try to keep the intros at like 2 minutes or so. So I had to cut out a lot of stuff, but it talks about what he's wearing and how he was like shining like a star, and he just had his horse there, and they talk about the horse.
The charge as well. He was so fierce on his charge that the forces of darkness thought he was Orome riding at them.
Yeah.
And so none went to intercept or challenge him on his ride to Angband.
Yeah, and then it's, you know what was really interesting about this part is that like I know that they talked about Melkor not really like taking like corporeal form that often after like the original part of the story, but it's like it talks about him not wanting to go, not wanting to do that. And
at this point,
he's still
Morgoth had with his creations.
Oh yeah. This is where he is stuck
so much of himself into them that he had become more tied to the earth than the other Valar, and so he now like cannot not be in corporal form.
Yeah. I'm sorry, that was my misreading what I wrote. But what was interesting about that, and I like because I was editing the audio for the intro, was that I realized it's like Melkor was the only one of the Valar who experienced fear. And I was like, wow. And it's like, you know, Fingolfin's coming, and this challenge is so threatening to him that it actually frightens him.
Yeah.
I thought that was really interesting.
And the only reason he came forward was because his captains.
Yeah.
They're pretty much looking at him like, what are you gonna do, buddy? Come on.
Fingolfin is sitting there calling him a coward as well outside.
Yeah,
banging on the doors.
It is really funny. And it's you know, it's funny about that too, is that like reminds me of back when the Melkor and Ungoliant attacked the Valar and stuff and stole light from the trees, is that afterwards, because of what like Melkor had to tell Ungoliant to get her to help him, it's like you realize that like this guy might be a big baddie, but like he has some enemies too. So it was very like if his minions were like doubting his ability to like, you know, go up and fight him, it's like he had to do it just to maintain his own power, which is a lot to think about.
Yeah.
But this is where Glaurung makes his reappearance as well. Leading up to that point, you know, the forces just like stream out of Angband and Morgoth's area. And in the front of that fire came Glaurung the Golden, father of dragons, in his full might. And in his train were Balrogs, and behind them came the black armies of the orcs in multitudes such as the Noldor had never before seen or imagined. And they assaulted the fortresses of the Noldor and broke the leaguer about Angband and slew wherever they found them, the Noldor and their allies, Grey Elves and men. So like they just came out with a vengeance.
Yeah, the start of that is like the way they describe that is so epic, and it's like I kind of wish it was more like personal, like it was like Lord of the Rings or something, because I was thinking of like the Battle of Pelennor Fields and how great that part is, and everything, and when Theoden dies and stuff, because that's like one of my favorite parts, Lord of the Rings. But it's just the scale of this is so intense, and I think that part right there, it just really, really grasps that that like meaning there, where like the sort of impersonal historical aspects and the fact that we don't know these characters that well other than just the descriptions, I think that part of it like really, really got me for this chapter.
Yeah, and this is where the sons of Finarfin who had come with Fingolfin, they were slain, and Fingolfin's sons are slain, and the leadership of the Noldor is getting cut down. Like
Yeah.
So that's where the black pill of Fingolfin happens. Like his sons are dead, his nephews are dead.
Yeah, like everything.
Like his direct nephews are dead. Then his half nephews are dying as well.
Yeah, and then it's like, again, it's like you think of like the World War I stuff that Tolkien went through, and you're like, how much I mean, I feel like of all the people like to have written stuff, I think he would have been like uniquely qualified to see that kind of thing because of the sort of unimaginable destruction and death that was in that conflict. So he would probably very well know what somebody like despair would, where like you'd see heroic acts based on desperation. And
and even Morgoth hitting the ground with his mace, was it?
Yeah,
leaving big ruts in the ground.
Hammer,
it rents the earth and stuff like that.
Real quick, this isn't in the Silmarillion, but there is a little thing here since we are on this particular chapter. It's actually an expanded version of said chapter written by J.R.R. Tolkien, where you actually have the full quote of the challenge of Fingolfin.
Oh, read it.
His hopeless challenge, dauntless, cried Fingolfin there. Come open wide, Dark King, your ghastly brazen doors. Come forth, whom earth and heaven abhors. Come forth, O monstrous craven lord, and fight with thine own hand and sword, thou wielder of hosts and banded thralls, thou tyrant leaguered with strong walls, thou foe of Valar and elvish race. I wait thee here. Come, show thy face.
That's so cool. Like drop it like sick rhymes too. Oh my goodness. I don't know, Feanor. Like that's some like big D energy there.
Yeah, it is. I'm not even gonna front. That is. It totally is.
I feel like if Feanor like had a little bit more chill, he would have been more like Fingolfin. But like I think they're two sides of a
Feanor is the alpha Chad. Fingolfin is the Sigma Chad.
Fingolfin Sigma.
I like that one. That is really cool. That is a good one. I
I'll wait
like
for that
one
Twitter
a lot.
account to pop up. That'll be great.
Fingolfin, Miss Sigma. Yeah, he just goes
High
out
King
there
Fingolfin, Sigma Chad of Middle Earth. Yeah, that'll be great.
I love it. Oh my goodness, that's so funny.
If it doesn't support you in everything, Feanor, like then it's not the real Fingolfin.
Yeah, right. Oh goodness.
Oh god, that's so crazy. And of course, I thought that. Now, let's talk about the battle. So it's really interesting because it mentions like I think Fingolfin strikes Melkor 3 times. Or 7 times, I don't remember.
3. Fingolfin strikes him 7 times. He does 7 wounds to him, before he takes the first blow, and then he takes 3 blows from Morgoth and falls, and that's when he half cuts Morgoth's foot off.
Yeah, and so yeah, and it's interesting that he was even able to wound him, and the fact that he could be wounded. Now, I thought this was interesting because I know there's more in Unfinished Tales and stuff, but I wasn't sure if they could be wounded. Is this like, could they die? Could you like hypothetically kill a Valar?
This goes back to what Gadfly was saying about how, because he put so much of his essence into the physical world, that he retained a corporeal form. By doing that, he made himself pretty much able to be harmed by the elves. I'm not going to go too far ahead in the story because we're not there yet. But,
I don't. Well, yeah, we're not there. But okay, so it's because of his ties to the physical world that he's more like
exactly
aligned to that stuff.
And I think that's one. It's not stated, but I would assume that's one of the reasons why he was so afraid to go up there, was because he realized, like, oh crap, like I can't be ethereal anymore. Like I can't. I don't have my full power.
Well, it's another example of that evil being its own undoing, right?
I really felt like that in this.
The Noldor had the weapons to be able to fight off that first invasion of the orcs, because Melkor had given them the design and the desire to make weapons, and so all the Noldor were making weapons in secret against each other during that family dispute.
Yep.
On Valinor, and then they come over, and now they have weapons in order to fight the orcs, and they're fantastic weapons because obviously, like, Feanor was the greatest craftsman in Valinor, right? And then this is just another example. He's in his evil scheming and evil plotting, and his desire to hold the Silmarils. Remember, because he held on to the Silmarils even though they were burning him.
Yeah, I love how that talks about how they just was like, he wanted them so much, and then he finally gets them, and he can barely even hold them because they're so powerful, and that they hurt him and weaken him.
Yeah, so he's set himself up based off of his own ambitions and designs and desires, and his inability to think of anything but his own gain. He's set himself up to be able to be defeated.
And it's an interesting little callback too, because if you recall, when Morgoth goes to visit Feanor at Formenos, and Feanor just slams the doors in his face, like, get out of here. And fast forward, Feanor's brother shows up, and Morgoth is forced to come up and open his doors. And it's like a total role reversal almost. But
that's cool.
And also, and the other thing to note about that is Morgoth was more powerful when Feanor did that, and Morgoth didn't try and test Feanor at all after Feanor did that. I don't know if there was already fear that was there of the Noldor, but
good point.
Could be entirely possible.
Or maybe he's like, well, if he made the Silmarils, like, what else does he have?
Like, what else can he pull out?
The other thing to consider as well is, right, like, this is the Tolkien mythology, yada yada yada, and in mythology of Earth, like various actual mythologies, you have instances of gods being injured and wounded by mortals, right? There's in the Iliad, there's a battle in which all the gods come down, and there's this one dude, I'm trying to remember his name, begins with a D, but he ends up
Diomedes,
he ends up wounding Aphrodite, and she is pissed at that, because, well, how dare a mortal, injure a god? But so it's, you see, once again, the historical precedent within Tolkien's work is all there, where you have these deities, because remember, the Valar, which includes Morgoth, are lowercase g gods.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
That's interesting. So eventually, obviously, he can't win, and he gets injured himself and crushed and everything, and eventually dies. And it's really awesome because Thorondor, the king of the eagles, comes back to
Yep.
rescue his body because he's about ready to get fed to the orcs and stuff.
scratches Morgoth's face as well.
Yeah,
and
carves
Scratches
his
Yeah.
face out.
eyes.
Yeah.
great.
Matt in the
So-
chat was pointing out that the wound in Morgoth's foot doesn't heal, but it's all the wounds that he receives. The 7 wounds,
point.
the foot wound, and the eagle claw scratches. None of them really properly heal.
Yeah, that is really interesting because that has a lot of like, I mean, it's obvious something we see in other stories, like Rand in Wheel of Time gets the Shadow Logoth dagger on his side that never properly heals either, and obviously there's some allusions to Jesus there and his wounding on the side, and
Well, this is the more so similar to the in Genesis the promise to Eve where her son would stamp on the heel on the head of the serpent, and the serpent would bite her son's heel. So there's that allusion there as well.
yeah, that's a good point. Like, I know I did start reading the Bible, but like I started that project like 2 years ago. I need to get it back, but yeah, and so that's cool that the Thoronder comes in, he rescues his body, and he does wound Melkor too, and that kind of like, I feel like there was something else with eagles, and I know it's in like the Prometheus story, or like it reminded me of kind of like Odin, like not really losing his eye, but he gets scratched in his face. So I guess it's really not the same thing, but
The one thing to note
Yeah.
about this fight is the orcs never boast of it, and the elves never
Yeah.
sing of it.
Yeah.
It's just one of those things
That
where
was-
they get,
that was a
neither
good
side
thing.
talks about it, like because it didn't really end well for anybody. So,
yeah,
Yeah.
that was really crazy. Like no songs. It reminds me of part like 300 where they're like no songs were sung that night. But yeah, it is definitely sad, and I think it really is like a turning point. I mean, I'm sure things. I don't know if things are going to get better. I'm not going to make any assumptions and stuff, but it sort of does get better in like the end of the chapter. Like Fingon becomes king of Noldor, and then we hear about Gil-galad, and this time I think he's really freaked out. So Gil-galad is Fingon's son, and he gets sent back to Valinor, and that was the first time they called that place the Haven.
mhm.
I hope like they are referring to Valinor, right?
No, so
No. This is different. Okay, I got that wrong. I was curious about that. I wanted to ask you.
I'm spacing out on the name myself, but no. So Círdan and Gil-galad have havens on the coast of Middle Earth.
Okay.
And it's in.
Are these
in
the gray havens, or is it different?
No, the
Okay.
gray.
This is-
So
Oh, okay.
yeah, we'll get to the gray havens later. That's a whole other.
Okay,
that
I'm
happens way down
just
the
I'm
road,
trying
but,
to connect dots here,
you're
like
good.
with my
But
reading.
they have their own haven for the elves on the coast, and I believe Círdan keeps trying to send ships to Valinor to get
Yes,
aid.
he does, and that's where
And-
they talk about
Yeah.
his, on the getting stuck on the islands, and they're like not
Mhm.
allowed to go past it.
And but yeah, he has his havens there. I believe it's in Neverest. I believe. Let me double check.
Yeah,
that.
I want to say that I was
Blah, blah,
this part of time I was so lost with names and places, like it was crazy. But yeah, he sends
He's
his
in-
son Gil-galad away.
He's in Eglarest and West Beleriand. So he's
Oh, okay.
yeah, he's on the west coast, like southwest coast of Beleriand there.
Yeah, and then
But-
And
they
too,
talk
that was Ulmo had more power in that area
Mhm.
too, because it was
Yeah.
near
Oh,
the
yeah.
coast, and thought that was cool.
Yeah, definitely. Almost still there fighting for people, the ocean. I'm
The
still on
most
my
in-
Teleri trip.
The most involved of the Valar when it comes
Mhm.
to the goings on in the first age.
Yeah. I thought that was interesting on that. And what was interesting about this part is the sort of second part after the glorious death of Fingolfin, and we get to like talking about how like Morgoth's touch has really corrupted the land, and that is definitely a big theme in literature. And it's like big in fantasy, like it's in Gothic literature, or like the sort of corruption of evil has like a physical manifestation and stuff. And it talks about some more of the men too. You have Bear here and his men and some women, and they stay and fight until there are only about 12 left. And
Yeah,
this is
that
really
was cool. I
important
like
for the
that.
next chapter, which I just read a little bit of it, but I didn't go any further than this. But Beren is going to be important for the story of Beren and Luthien, and but he's part of this band of 12 people, and they're just getting hunted down basically in this sort of like burnt out no man's land area that sort of again reminded me of World War I. And then we come to Sauron. This is interesting. This is Sauron's part.
This is if y'all follow me on Twitter, this is where I get really angry with a certain fan base when they try and make him a sympathetic character, because I point directly to this and say, "Are you kidding me?" Like, no, no, he's totally
yes. Like, shut up.
I hate
He's
the whole
not
sympathetic
dreamy
bad
shit guy.
You mean people can't fix him?
Stop it.
Oh, no.
No, I hate
And
this.
what he does,
hate...
and two, you could also point to what he does to Gilgalad too. Grabs him.
I'm
and
not
burns
there
him to
yet.
death.
I'm not there yet, Jacob. Don't
Oh,
spoiler it for me.
Sorry.
But yeah,
But that's,
I really
isn't that?
go ahead.
Oh, I thought that was in Lord of the Rings.
No, but
Maybe it was. I don't remember it. Like I
think we actually get to it in the Silmarillion eventually.
Oh, okay.
Okay,
Sorry.
But no, Gorlim the Unhappy. Yeah, that was a great part of this.
Yeah.
To I think it's the city where the 12 men were is Minas Tirith too.
Well,
they did talk about that.
There's 2 different Minas Tiriths. So
yeah.
Let me see here. Actually, wait, I have my atlas right here.
Yeah, but it's like, if there's 2 Minas Tiriths, I'm gonna be just so hopefully lost. But what was interesting about this is we learn a lot about Sauron, and what we haven't got much information is about like the amount of sorcery and stuff like the Maiar can do. And then it doesn't get into a lot of details, but it talks about like he uses force and sorcery to take Minas Tirith. And that he's capturing elves and he's enslaving them. He's turning them to his will so he can like manipulate the will. He can like mess with people's heads and their minds and stuff. And he's having them spread lies. So once again, he's just kind of, I could see him wanting to like usurp Melkor a little bit, like how he originally started doing this Feanor and stuff. And and unfortunately, because of what Melkor did and the fact that, Feanor did the kinseling, it's like they believe this stuff. And so, like, that's another kind of metaphorical evil getting out in the world. And we also learn about, what are they called? The Easterlings, the swarthy men that come into Melkor's survey. And they don't get along with the Edain. And there's just so much in this chapter. It's crazy. We get almost saving Hurin and J.R.R, sons of the Edain Galdor. And that was a kind of a cool story. Like, is there anything else you guys wanted to talk about Sauron before we get there?
Well, it's one thing to note is that's important for stuff coming up is that he's the Lord of the Werewolves.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you guys about that because I just thought that was really interesting. Why would they call him that?
That's a read and find out.
Yep, that's a read and find out.
Oh boy, werewolves! Yeah, werewolves. That's pretty crazy. So,
There's also vampires too.
Ooh, vampires, really? Oh my goodness.
Sauron's most powerful assistant is effectively a vampire lady.
Yeah. Ooh, okay. This is like coming up next time. This is gonna be cool. I can't wait to read this. And I have so much gardening stuff right now, and I'm basically learning to be like Samwise here at the same time
I've
reading
learned,
this.
reading this, I've learned bits and pieces of it, and it's nice just to fill in the gaps and learn about it. It's cool.
Yeah, so yeah, we learned about the Easterlings and stuff, and it's like they've just stayed evil this whole time, so props for them. They're making it all the way in the Third Age with that. And then
well, marks
But-
for consistency.
Weren't there faithful though? It mentions faithful in this.
Mhm.
yeah,
Weren't there
they're
ones that
faithful
were
to
faithful?
Sauron. Like,
Well, no, there's Sauron's the Lord of Vampires and Werewolves and a Necromancer. Yeah, Sauron's a pretty powerful dude.
yeah, definitely. He is.
But it's great too because it's already setting up the drop in strength and power and might of Morgoth and his replacement, right? Like it's you're already seeing this cycle come to
Yeah, and again, it's the whole thing. It's like, like the power, the corrupting power of evil, and the fact that, there's always going to be people hungering for that, just like it was a Morgoth and Ungoliant. Like he had to deal with her, and now, Sauron's in the building. And yeah, the chapter ends with the almost saving Huron and J.R.R, which were the sons of Edain Galdor. And he takes them to Gondolin. And this is kind of an interesting story because they get there by flight, and I do believe they're arrived by night, and they're told the same thing that Eöl was told, and they decide to, it's really nice here, we'll stay and we'll give you a word and stuff like that. And it was
So just here, I want to call back to the story of the forming of Gondolin.
Oh yeah, go for it.
Because Olwe gives, or Ulmo, sorry, not Olwe, Ulmo gives a message to Turgon about saying, like, because you are still under Mandos's curse, your stuff is going to fall. But there is going to be a warning coming to you about
yeah. I forgot the
but
actual
in order
wording of that.
For you to trust this message, you have to design a arms and armor, and the person with those arms and armor coming to Gondolin will know that his warning is true. So that's an important element of the founding of Gondolin, that even at its very outset, Turgon knows that it's going to fall.
It's eventually fall, yeah.
But he has that ability of having some foresight of when it is going to happen, and thus be able to spare a lot of people a lot of suffering.
Yeah,
potentially.
That's a great point. Potentially.
Fingers crossed in his mind, right? Not spoiling anything.
Yeah, that's why they're so anal about who goes and leaves, and that's why this story was kind of cool, because it was like, it involves humans, and the Eagles bring them there, and they actually do keep their word, and they stay there for like a year or something, and then they ask like, hey, like we were worried about our families, can we go? And I think Turgon says, yeah, you can leave as long as you came here. If you leave the way you came and you go at night and you swear not to tell anyone what happened or like about this place, and they keep their word and they get to go back, which was pretty cool. It's like it mirrors the story of Eöl and stuff like that. That it's sort of like the justice is like a thing there.
Well, it lets you know that there was a solution for
Eöl
if he
exactly.
had not been consumed by his hatred and anger.
Yeah, exactly. It's very like it's a flip side of that story. And then what's so great, it's like you never realize the length into the scope of this story as you're reading it, but it says like at the end too, 7 years later, Morgoth attacks Hithlum again. And then Fingon is outnumbered, but Círdan comes back and with the shipwright guy, and he brings help from the west, and they drive out the orcs.
That was cool.
So yeah, that was the end of that chapter, and man, there was just so much stuff here. Like, I gotta say, this book it's crazy, really. I mean, I could just see, like, I could just imagine like if Tolkien wrote like a Lord of the Rings size books for this series, that would be just so amazing.
Well, there are
I've
some.
always- Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
There are some books. So Baron and Luthien has its own book.
It's a great one.
It is a great one. My personal favorite is The
They're
Children
all
of
great.
Urin, which
I mean,
story of it's the more expanded version of Turin Bar.
Okay.
Which I will have that at the ready when we do that. He did The Fall of Numenor and The Fall of Gondolin. So,
Oh, cool.
and yeah,
that is really cool.
Yeah, and they're like full on expanded novels of those stories in the Silmarillion. And I think
that is really cool.
I think they're actually going to have more coming out. I think. Don't quote me on that. But
well, the most recent one was compiled by somebody other than Christopher Tolkien. I forget who it was. I forget who.
I know it was somebody in the Tolkien family. I can't remember who it was though.
Yeah, it's somebody who was very closely associated with a particular side of the Tolkien family, i.e., Christopher Tolkien and his coterie, and not some of the other Tolkien family.
Yeah, that is so awesome. Yeah, this has just been a joy to read, even though it is like really, it's very meaty, and sometimes I have to go back and like look and take notes about and make sure I got everything. But it has been an absolute joy to be here talking to you guys about this, and thank you for coming on, Jacob, and everything. And thank you so many people in chat. Like we have 13 people right now, which is awesome because I think the most people we've had for the book chat. And I know thank you guys for watching after the fact. And I'm sorry that I haven't gotten to respond to all the comments on these videos because I have been insanely busy. But we will probably be meeting again. We haven't decided if it's like next week or in 2 weeks. I think we were all okay with meeting again in 2 weeks from now. But I'll definitely post that up on Twitter again. And I think it'll end up being the 22nd or let's see, 2 weeks from the 22nd is when we'll meet back. If everyone's okay is here with the 22nd, that's fine with me. So
yeah. So long as it's a Sunday, I'm able to do it.
Yeah. Oh, that's a scary thought, Matt. Don't freak me out like that. Public domain, yikes. Yeah, and thank you guys all for coming and listening to me. I will be on later tonight with Tech Mex and Alex from the White Cloaks. I know he's all up in the chat with his actual name on there, but we'll be out later tonight, and then I'll be with Zax on Wednesday. Feanor, do you have anything coming up?
Yes, I have a video that I'm currently in the process of working on. It's going to be called oh shoot, I have it right here. Rings of Power fans, the postmodern enemies of Tolkien. And that's going to be a chunker of a video. I got a lot of receipts from a lot of Rings of Power fans that I'm going to be ripping to shreds. So that's going to be a fun one. I still need to finish the script on it. But and then other than that, just these streams and if any other news comes out about Rings of Power, I'll be covering it. So
awesome, cool. Gadfly, do you have anything coming up?
Well, due to some issues with WordPress, I'm looking at potential alternative sources to host my stuff. So I haven't released what I thought I was going to release yet because I'm exploring those ideas. But yeah, I do have that language article and how you can use language within, like a fictional language within your story to make a believable setting. I also have one in the works on how to develop believable cultures within a fictional setting.
That's awesome.
So cool. I've got those two coming out, but I'm not sure if I'm going to be putting them on WordPress or not. I gotta see if it's worth continuing with that one or switching to another one with the issues.
Yeah, that is very difficult to deal with that kind of stuff. Jacob, you got anything coming up?
Yeah, Tuesday, two things. I'm going to be on Pops talking Beetlejuice, and then
fun.
Later on my show, I'll be talking The Invisible Man, 1933.
Sweet, awesome.
And then Saturday, I'll be just talking favorite movie monsters.
Ooh, that's good. Good Halloween stuff. And oh yeah, I should hopefully be going to be keep continuing on my like Wheel of Prime reviews. It's so hard for me like trying to do school and everything right now because the classes are just so intense. So I haven't gotten time to work on it. But again, thank you all for like being here. Thank you for 14 people watching in the chat, and we will see you guys next week. And let me get my outro video loaded up.
2 weeks,
And
right?
thanks again. Oh yes, 2 weeks. Yes, 2 weeks, guys. October 22nd, and we'll be reading. I don't have the chapter names, but we'll read Of Barian and Luthien to the Voyage of Arendelle. So. And I have it on my outro. So with that, I'm going to start playing it, and we'll see you guys next time. Thanks again.